What is up, you guys? This is JP here. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I know that mothers and moms aren't necessarily the demographic for this channel, but obviously, you know, there are probably still some watching my videos. And then for all of my subscribers, you may have a wife or a girlfriend who you guys have a kid together. So happy Mother's Day to them. And then obviously happy Mother's Day to your guys' moms as well. I will be uploading this video the day after Mother's Day, or maybe 2 days after, so it will be a little bit after, but you guys get the drift. Also, one quick update on my gaming portion of this channel. If you guys didn't hear the first time, I am going to be including gaming content as well to this channel. Try that out. You guys gave a good upvote when I asked that question in the community section of this channel. Most of you guys said you're okay with the gaming content, but I have to make sure that it's okay with where I'm living, that I can use an Ethernet cable and kind of snake it through the house so I can connect it to the modem, because right now I'm just playing Xbox on Wi-Fi, and I don't want to do any streaming if I'm still on Wi-Fi, because again, I have a good computer, so I don't want to not be able to use that computer and put it to its full potential and give you guys a shitty stream. So that might have to hold off depending on how I can get that set up, but that's just the update for that. Today's video is going to be tips and tricks on how to up your calf raise game. So if you're doing calf raises, this is definitely going to help you. And this video is specifically pertaining to body weight calf raises. Some of the cues that I'm going to show you in this video, you could use during any variation of any calf raise. And obviously you'll be able to pick those out and apply them to any calf raise that you do. But this video is going to be specifically for those of you who are doing body weight calf raises at home, or you're doing them at the gym, because there's a lot of common problems that I see with people doing body weight calf raises. Now, the first thing first, and this is the simplest thing, is you never, ever, in my best never, ever voice, is you don't want to do them on the flat ground. So you don't just want to be here just doing calf raises just like this. It's not necessarily anything bad about that, but you're leaving so much gains on the table when you do that. You have to remember that range of motion is a component of hypertrophy. When you do a larger range of motion, you're doing more technical work, because work is force times displacement, and displacement is just a little bit fancier word to say distance. So work is just force times distance. So when you're doing range of motion this short on the ground, you're kind of you're shortening that range of motion, which means you're doing less work, which is technically less volume. And like I've said a million times on this channel, volume is what's going to dictate the magnitude of hypertrophy, how jacked your calves get over the long run. So you're always going to want to do them on some form of ledge, something like this. So you always want to do them on a ledge, and that ledge could be anywhere. Right here I'm just using like a jump box. You can do it on your porch outside or anything like that. So always do them on a ledge. So when you're doing them on the ledge though, you don't just want to just go up and down with calf raises, okay? So that'll bring me to my second point, is do not bounce. Don't bounce when you're doing the calf raises. We all know that when we do lifts and we're going through a full range of motion, that when you're coming out of the hole, or the bottom portion of the range of motion, going from that elongated part of that muscle and then coming out of the hole, like coming out of the hole on the squat, coming out of the bottom portion of a calf raise, you get a lot of benefit from the stretch reflex of the stretch shortening cycle. Our ligaments and tendons have a rubber band or a rebound effect to them. So when you're doing calf raises, don't bounce, because specifically the ankle joint itself gets a lot of, the ankle joint and the calves get a lot of benefit from the stretch reflex. The ankle is a very powerful joint in that aspect. So we're trying to put the focus on the muscle and not on the ligaments and tendons of the ankle, which are very powerful. Again, if we're bouncing on this, our calves aren't going to be doing that much work. That's what the ankle joint was specifically made to do, obviously, or how evolution brought up humans, is like, think about jumping and running. It's going to be on the ankle joint. So that's one thing that you don't want to do, is bounce, because if you bounce, it's just going to take a lot off of the calf and make it, we're not doing this for performance, or we're not doing this for like a strength measure. If this were strength and we're just focused on weights or numbers, then yeah, like in a squat, you want to use the stretch reflex coming out of the hole. You don't necessarily want to do that for a calf raise, so don't bounce. So again, the first one is don't do it on the floor. That's the first step. The second tip is don't bounce. Now, when you're doing these, if you're not bouncing, there's a couple cues I want you to do. When you're at the bottom of the calf raise, at the very bottom, I want you to point your toes as hard as you can towards your face. You're essentially going to be flexing your tibialis anterior, so you want to point your toes up as hard as you can. So hard, hard, hard. And you can simultaneously think about driving your heels down. So your toes and your heels are kind of like a teeter-totter. So as your toes are coming up, I'm pointing up, 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 up. You want your heels to go down, 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 down. And that's going to ensure that you get a full lengthening and a full range of motion during the calf raise. But at the same time, too, when you're doing this, you want to pause at the bottom. So you don't just want to come down, up, and then go straight back up. You want to give it like about 1 second pause. So come down, or maybe not 1 second, like a half a second or a quarter second. You just want a clear pause. So when you're coming up, you're going down, point your toes, drive your heels, pause, and then come up. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you're at the top, you want to point your toes down and get on your tippy toes. So you want to point your toes down, and I just tell myself, get on my tippy toes, get on my tippy toes, and you want to drive your heels up into the back of your leg. You want to get your heel up here as hard as you can. You want to get it up, up, up. So when you're up here, it's tippy toes, heels, 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 up, up. Even just doing that, it burns from doing 1 repetition. So again, at the bottom, toes up, heels down. At the top, toes down, heels up, get on your tippy toes, drive that heel. So again, in pause at the top, to take a brief pause. These brief pauses at the top and bottom are going to absolutely ensure that you're not doing this rocking that most people are tended to do. You know, you'll see some people in the gym who are just kind of bouncing up and down. So again, first tip, don't do it on the floor, do it on a ledge. The second tip is don't bounce. The third tip is use those cues with the heels or with your heel and toe to make sure that you're getting an absolute full range of motion during the calf raise. Couple more tips. The first one is when I'm doing this, I like to lean over onto something and put my hands on it, and then I kind of like to stick my butt out a little bit. If you guys don't know, the gastrocnemius, or gastroc for short, is one of the muscles of the calf, and it crosses the knee joint. So it actually aids in knee flexion. So when you have a very extended knee, you're going to make sure that your gastrocnemius or your gastroc is fully lengthened. So what I like to do is, just to make sure I'm getting a full lengthening on that, I like to actually lean forward and stick my butt out when I'm doing this too. But you have to make sure that when you're leaning forward, you're not leaning and putting all your weight on whatever you're leaning on. So you just want to lean forward, just kind of use it for balance, and then stick your butt out like this. So from here, just like this in this position. Even just sitting here from here, if you just get to this position alone, you'll automatically feel like a stretch in your calf. And again, that's the goal with using that tip, is just to make sure that you're getting that stretch in the calf and you're not shortchanging it. Also too, when you're leaning forward, what helps with that, what that does is it kind of, if you look at the position of my leg when I lean forward a little bit, if I lean forward versus standing straight up, you can tell I'm getting a little bit more dorsiflexion. This angle right here is getting smaller. And when you have more dorsiflexion, which your toes pointed up, at the bottom range of motion, that means that you're ultimately getting a larger range of motion. Think about it. And that goes into my next tip is, you do want to be leaning forward. You never want to be leaning back. Some people will be straight up, and this kind of goes counter with leaning forward. So if you're leaning forward, you're obviously not going to be leaning back. But if you're leaning forward, or if you're leaning backwards, you're really shortening the range of motion. Because if I'm way back here, think about it, my ankle's becoming less and less dorsiflexed. And if this is the bottom range of motion right here, think about it. This is all I'm doing is a short range of motion, versus if I come way over here and I stick my butt out, it's such a much larger range of motion. So we don't want to cut range of motion that short. Now, all those tips, bring them all together. I'll do a few reps for here, and then I'll give you one bonus tip. So here, stick your butt out. Make sure you're stretching out the gastroc. Lean forward. I'm not putting all my weight on this. So you want to come up, squeeze, drive, pause, control down, point my toes, drive my heels. So even doing 2 reps like that, you can already start to feel the burn, and makes your calf game go way up. Now, the last tip that I'm going to give you is, for those of you who are doing bodyweight calf raises, if you need a way to make it harder, because eventually body weight is just going to be limiting. If you're doing dozens and dozens of reps, like you're starting to get close to 50 reps body weight, there is a certain point where if you do too many reps, that means the load is too light. And if the load is too light, that means it's too low of an intensity. And there's a certain threshold of intensity. It's around 30% of 1 rep max, which again, you'd have to calculate that. But or if you start to go below 30% of 1 rep max, then you're leaving the gains on the table, even if you train to failure. So there might be a point where calf raises come and they're just too easy. They're just too easy for you. You're like, okay, so what do I do? This may seem very obvious, but a lot of people don't think about it. just use one leg. So instead of doing 2 legs, just use 1 leg. So you can go from here, same thing, boom. Might take a little bit more balance, but it instantly becomes twice as hard. So if you're doing 40, 50 reps, you're going to be doing maybe somewhere between 20 and 30, so you're halving your reps. And you can kind of take that a little bit further as using one hand to balance and just holding a weight in one hand and doing a single leg. Yes, that'll take a little bit more balance, but that is definitely a way to keep overloading and making your calf game, like an A+ and not doing it kind of sloppy. If you guys enjoy these tips, please comment down below and let me know what tip helped you the best. If you guys have any ideas for videos you want me to do in the future, please comment down below and let me know. Thank you guys for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, click the notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.